Hi there, I'm Shawna Robins, founder and CEO of Third Spark. And today I have the pleasure of doing an Authority Magazine interview with Dave Asprey. Dave Asprey is a health science and biotech entrepreneur. He's also a four-time New York Times bestselling author and is often referred to as the father of biohacking. As the CEO and founder of Upgrade Labs, the world's first human upgrade center focused on longevity, weight loss, recovery, human performance, and cognitive function, his work has led to the development of science-backed methods and products to enhance mental and physical well-being. Dave is also the host of the Human Upgrade podcast, where he shares his insights and expertise with a global audience. Hi, Dave. Thanks for joining me.
Hi, Shauna. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. Okay, so tell me how you have found your way into the health and wellness field. Tell me your personal journey and how you got to where you are today.
There was a time when I was a tech entrepreneur in my 20s. I weighed 300 pounds, and today I'm about 6% body fat. Like on the cover of my new book, Heavily Meditated, I'm like shirts off, which is the most unlikely thing to ever happen, to be the fat hacker from Jurassic Park 1, but not a bad guy, to moving into health and fitness. And what happened was my career was taking off and my brain was failing. And I had massive chronic fatigue syndrome, huge brain fog, arthritis since I was 14, 15 years of antibiotic use, high risk of stroke and heart attack and prediabetes before I was 30. Some of the founders of one of the first longevity nonprofits in the world in Silicon Valley took me under their wing, and I learned about longevity in the late 90s from the luminaries in the field. Soon I was running the nonprofit, and I started blogging when I was head of security or cloud security for a big tech company. And I said, here's how to hack the human body, because I've had to go through and undo all of these things that were going wrong in my hardware. Along the way, I got a brain scan with Daniel Amen. And the psychiatrist, I went in to see him. I was failing out of Wharton Business School. I'm working full time. And he looked at me and said, Tech bro wants Adderall. I got this. But when he saw my brain scan, he just kind of turned white and he said, Dave, inside your brain is total chaos. I don't know how you're standing here in front of me right now. You have the best camouflage I've ever seen. And I was like, thank God, someone believes me. And what I've learned since then is that humans, because we're tribal creatures, we're wired subconsciously to hide when we're sick, when we're not well, and we only show it when there's no other choice. Which means when you look around to your left or your right, there are people who are acting normal who are completely tapped out. With the accelerator pressed all the way to the floor and the car is slowing down, you can push harder on the pedal, but it doesn't matter. That was my life. Yet here I am. I'm a tech entrepreneur. I made $6 million when I'm 26. Thank God. I lost when I was 28. But it let me spend whatever was necessary to literally hack my own biology. I started blogging about it because I wanted 5 people to not suffer the way I had. More than 5 people are interested. People know me from Bulletproof Coffee. I created the biohacking term. It's a new word in the English language as of 2016. My name's in the Webster's Online Dictionary. And it's now a $63 billion global industry around giving people the tools to have control of their state, of their biology. And funny enough, the very first book I wrote was because the mother of my children, a physician, was infertile. And we restored her fertility using biohacking. And 55% of biohackers have always been women since the very early days, because biohacking, it's about controlling your state. And here's the secret. Women are usually better biohackers than men. Because for most guys, if there's no bone sticking out, we're like, there's nothing going on. I don't need to worry. And women are used to their state changing. So I find it's easier for women to step into biohacking than men. And women also have more challenges because you have these 3 distinct phases of life and different rules applied to your body depending on where you are in your stage of life. But the tools, they're similar. The rules are different for men and women, but the underlying things, if you have more energy, you have more power, you have more control, and your body will naturally regulate better. And if we can reduce your stress and get your body working reasonably well, your body will regulate and you'll be able to weather whatever is coming your way.
So really, this is just about building stress resilience, if I hear you correctly. I mean, that's the bottom core of biohacking, right? It's just how do we get our bodies to thrive more under stress? No?
It's part of it.
Mm.
So there's sort of three pillars in biohacking. People come in, they're saying, I have a problem with my sleep, or I can't lose weight, or my knee hurts, or like there's something that I want to work on. But when you start doing that, you get more energy. And then you say, oh my gosh, I actually want to live longer because life is better. So all of a sudden you become interested in longevity and you realize it's not about health span. I might live 20 years longer and have a really good life the whole time. So now suddenly you think, okay, what do I have to do for that? And then you realize if I'm going to live a long time, maybe I should learn how to be happy. Maybe I don't want other people to be able to trigger me all the time. Maybe these feelings of anxiety are coming from my hormones, or maybe they're coming from my childhood, whatever it is. I just want to learn how to be happy so that I can do what I'm here to do and I can be with my family, I can be with my friends, I can serve my community. So all biohacking eventually becomes longevity and consciousness, pretty much no matter where you start.
I love that. So I think that definitely applies to women in midlife. I feel that the women at this stage in the game between 40 and
Mhm.
60 are looking for a new why, right? Because
Yes.
the why before that has been maybe the career or the family or building the community or the relationships. But now that those things shift and change in midlife, the why shifts, and the
Hmm.
why for them to get healthy and stay healthy shifts. And then what they need to do to even accomplish that changes. So can you touch
Hmm.
a little bit on, your thoughts on just tips, hacks,
Yes.
tools that women can use at this stage?
It's really important to understand that the hormone system in men and women is different, and that women, up until about the age of 35, you make stress hormones, primarily cortisol and adrenaline. Okay, these are not bad. You need cortisol to recover from stress. You need cortisol to not get sick. There's a reason they inject steroids like cortisol or prednisone if you have a big injury that won't heal. So cortisol is weirdly healing, and if it's always high, it's a source of stress. So low cortisol is more deadly than high cortisol, but you don't want either one.
Mhm.
And when you're 35 and under, your body makes the hormones that counterbalance cortisol. And these are called DHEA and pregnenolone, and to a certain point, progesterone. Commonly known hormones, most people have heard of them, but may not know that it's a teeter totter, a balance between adrenaline and cortisol and these other hormones. At 35, your production of your stress counterbalancing hormone starts to decline. And you're like, what is going on here? But it's a slow decline. So by the time you're 45, like, man, I just don't handle stress the way I did before. My sleep isn't as good as it was. And if we got a lab test, which is very affordable these days, you can do it at home, to measure your DHEA and your pregnenolone and your cortisol, you say, oh, look, here's where I am. And if you supplemented those starting at about age 35 and sometimes a little earlier, you wouldn't have the decline from 35 to 45.
Hmm.
And then around 45 to 50, when perimenopause starts for most women, sometimes lately it's earlier too because of environmental factors.
Sure.
Well, then we've got to do something else during perimenopause. What you want to do there is you want to make sure that you're getting your lab tests so that you know which direction is my body going as I go into perimenopause. And how do you make sure that your mitochondria keep making energy? And women whose mitochondria work because their stress hormones are in balance experience a smooth perimenopause.
Hmm.
And women whose energy production systems are spiky or don't make enough energy experience a much rougher one. And here's the really important thing that I wish every woman understood. And I say this as an author of a major book on fertility and aging. If a woman goes on bioidentical hormone replacement therapy at or right after perimenopause, her lifelong risk of dying from anything goes down dramatically.
Hmm.
So, biological hormone replacement reduces your risk of everything, including cardiovascular, Alzheimer's, all the stuff that none of us wants. So, have the hormones of a young woman or a young man when you're at any age, and you will love the quality of your life. And what's more interesting is studies show that women, after they go through perimenopause, oftentimes experience some of the happiest times in their life because you've had a chance to work on your trauma, to learn how things work, and to gain wisdom.
Hmm.
And you actually deal with less fluctuations. But if perimenopause breaks some system in your body and you're not keeping your hormones where they ought to be, then you can just be exhausted when you're in menopause. That's not a natural or a normal state, and it is eminently hackable. A functional medicine or longevity doctor can help you with this.
Mm. And I think that's the biggest challenge right there that you just touched on. I know for
Mhm.
me, I started bioidentical hormones when I was 50. It took me 5 different doctors to find somebody who would help me get bioidentical hormones. Really a big challenge. And it wasn't until I found a doctor that had been practicing family medicine for like 40 years. And he said, sure, I have a
Wow.
compounding pharmacy that I work with. I'm happy to get these for you. Every other endocrinologist, OBGYN, everyone I saw said, you can take
Yeah.
the pill or the patch. That's what we have.
It's funny that endocrinologists don't know what they're doing with hormones
Hmm.
because endocrinologists focus on very specific one thing, and functional medicine and longevity doctors focus on the whole system of your body. It's sort of like if you were to hire a specialist and you're saying, I want to herd all of these sheep. And like, well, here's the one thing. There is no one thing. Like if it's going this way, you push it that way. It, what life requires is a recipe. And what Western medicine looks for is a single cause. So if you took a Western doctor steeped in pharmaceutical training, you would say, well, I want to bake some bread. And they would say, look, I tried baking the yeast, I tried baking the salt and the water and the flour, and there is no bread. You're like, but just mix them together in the right order, and I have this crusty sourdough bread, right? So it's just a very different way of thinking. And functional medicine doctors, many of them, listen to my show or read my books, and we have a similar way of thinking where it's our job to gently herd and massage your biology so it's in the state where you want it to be. And that gives you this incredible brain energy and resilience. And it's our job to just feel deep in our bones, I have enough energy to handle anything right now, whether it's stressful or not, whether what I expect happens or not, whether I see a political ad for the other side or not. It doesn't matter. Like, I get to choose how I feel right now. And I want to feel this way. And this is within reach. And the blessing of COVID is that telemedicine now works. And there's no reason it shouldn't work before, other than a bunch of trade lobbyists making sure that it was very expensive to go into a doctor. Well, now, thank God, you can get bioidentical hormones by getting a lab test at a local lab provider and working with a doctor over the internet, which makes it far more accessible than even 5 years ago.
Yeah, I agree with you that they're game changers. And I do think that it's time to bring down the barriers of entry for many women, not just in the US, but globally as well, too. So I
Great.
kind of want to transition into sleep. This is the perfect
Mm-hmm.
way into it because 1 in 4 women globally deals with insomnia.
Mm-hmm.
Such a female-based issue. And then you throw on the layers of, like you said, hormone changes and lifestyle changes and perimenopause, menopause,
Mm-hmm.
all these other things that we stress issues, caretaking, empty nesting, all the things that we go through emotionally as well. And our sleep is decimated at this stage of the
Yes.
game. So bioidentical hormones, yes, I agree with you 100%. Huge game-changing addition to helping to preserve my sleep. But for women that are not able to find them or have access to them, what else can they do?
Mm. It turns out that a lot of your sleep is controlled by things you wouldn't expect control your sleep. And I've been working on my sleep. I've been monitoring it almost every night for 18 years because I was such a bad sleeper. Most of my life, I went to bed at 2 a.m. Naturally, I couldn't go to sleep before then if I tried. And now, last night, I went to bed at 10, and it's easy. So, all of this is changeable. And if you're incredibly frustrated by your sleep, I've taught 100,000 people how to get a good night's sleep with just a free, like, here's all the things you need to know.
Mhm.
And to just to remember it easily, this is the funniest URL of my life. It's sleepwithdave.com. So, like, there's nothing, off color on there. It's just funny. And what you want to understand is that there's a central timing system for your body. It's called the SCN inside your brain. And it is controlled by certain things in your environment in this order. Number one is light. So the reason we're having a hard time sleeping is we switched to LED lighting, which is much more disruptive of this. And it doesn't take very much light in order to disrupt your sleep. And what's happening is your body is desperately trying to figure out what time of day it is. And the brain says, well, I'm going to tell the liver that it should be insulin resistant or not. And I'm going to tell the system to go into regeneration mode or into stress mode. And I'm going to use light as my signal to know what time it is. Because in all of history, at night, you could have fire. That was the brightest you could have. And anything brighter than that must be daylight.
Mm.
So my house has red lighting at night. And if I'm traveling, I religiously wear the True Dark glasses, which I designed 10 years ago, filed a patent on them, that control all of the colors of light that mess with your sleep. And
Mm.
when I wore these religiously for 6 months, I reset my circadian rhythm and I go to bed at 10 o'clock. I get tired and I never could. And it's incredible what happens with these glasses. We published in a neuroscience journal, wearing them for 15 minutes changes your brain waves the same way as meditation. So
Mm.
they're noise canceling headphones for your eyes, basically, and they're called True Dark, and they're different than blue blocking glasses because it turns out blue is just one of the colors that screws up your sleep. You put on blue blocking glasses, it's not going to make much of a difference. Put
Mm.
on True Darks with 5 different optical filters, and magically sleep becomes so much deeper and easier. And you can measure the results the first night. But aside from that, it's also number two is food availability. Back when we were little mitochondria floating in the ocean 2 billion years ago, the most algae was available between noon and 2. And you would never have a big meal right before bedtime because it wasn't possible. So if you eat a big meal or even eat after the sun goes down, the central clock in the body goes, I'm pretty sure it must be daytime because I got a lot of calories right now, which is why having an earlier dinner will magically change your sleep. And paradoxically, a lot of women around perimenopause, they have this problem of waking up at 3 or 4 with like
Okay.
racing thoughts. You just can't go back to sleep, right? This is because you have blood sugar dysregulation
Mm.
and the brain needs enough energy at night to clean itself and do its job. So the body knows if your blood sugar crashes, there's an easy way to get more blood sugar. You know what it is?
Tap your glucose stores.
Yes. And the way you tap your glucose stores is cortisol and adrenaline. So the body
Ah.
goes, your blood sugar dropped, eh? I got you. Have some stress hormones and some blood sugar as a side effect. Now the brain says, I got my blood sugar. And you're like, I'm thinking about my boss and that thing that went wrong. This happens to so many people. So the solution for that is right before bed, you have a teaspoon, maybe two of raw honey, which studies show will help to store extra carbs in your liver where the brain will tap first,
Hmm.
or some MCT oil. I'm kind of made that into $1 billion industry. It's an extract of coconut oil that provides a backup energy source for the brain. And some people need just a tiny amount, like 5 grams of collagen protein,
Mm.
which can donate an amino acid that helps you sleep better called glycine. So that was a lot, but here's the deal. If you wake up at 3 to 5 a.m. with racing thoughts, have a little bit of honey with some MCT oil. And if you want to be fancy, add a little bit of collagen, just do all three before bed and see if it improves things.
I'm game for that. I tell you, I
Yeah.
was up last night at 3, but that's because I had a glass of wine, so I kind of screwed
Mm.
myself in my sleep.
Sadly, alcohol ruins sleep. After 17 years, I used to sleep with a headband, not Victoria's Secret approved, that tracked my sleep. And I've got a mattress cover that does it. I'm testing out 2 different rings now. Just pick a sleep tracker, get the data every night, and
Mm.
you'll find the nights when you have alcohol, your deep and REM sleep suffer greatly. You might still sleep for 8 hours. You might feel like it was easier to go to sleep, but you can eat junk food. You can also get junk sleep. Alcohol is a recipe for junk sleep.
Yeah, I'm walking proof of that today. But the thing about that with women too is I feel like the more they know, the more they can make choices of how they want to show up and how they want to prioritize their sleep.
They can. And one of the things I'm working on to make biohacking, even the big tools, more accessible is my company, Upgrade Labs. We've got 30 locations in the process of opening and almost 10 already open across the US and Canada. And we use tools that increase mitochondrial function and reset your nervous system. The better your mitochondria, the better your sleep. And so fixing your metabolism strangely restores deep and efficient sleep. And we use things like clinical grade red and infrared light therapy, this very intense bed with custom frequencies. But you can also get a red light therapy device. They become very affordable. True Light makes affordable versions and has for a while, and there's many companies making these. Before bed, If you have a hard time going to sleep, use red light therapy, not necessarily in your eyes. Even bright red light can disturb sleep, although it may be okay. Put it over your abdomen
Hmm.
and just do 5 or 10 minutes of red light over your abdomen. And it's like, what just happened? You use red light to calm your vagus nerve, which
Hmm.
controls arousal and activation throughout the body. So this is a really easy thing to do. And at Upgrade Labs, people can also do clinical grade pulsed electromagnetic frequency therapy that increases bone density and makes your mitochondria stronger, and several other technologies, including one where you're breathing air with different mixes of oxygen and carbon dioxide. You do that 3 times a week for a few weeks, and your body's actually acclimated to high altitude. So your mitochondria are just better at oxygen. So it's weird. The more powerful your body is, the more energy you can produce, the less perimenopause symptoms you feel, and the better your sleep. So we work on fixing metabolism instead of just going to the gym and getting on a treadmill, which barely works.
I think the red light has one of the biggest game changers that I've experienced.
Oh,
But
awesome.
I'm excited to try the other ones. And I
Well,
didn't
come
know
in.
that about red light in the eyes either. I always thought that you needed to get it sort of on your face. You see all these new face things that are red light based. I guess that's apparently not helpful for sleep then.
Those are really good for your skin.
Hmm.
So there's studies showing red and amber and infrared are good for the skin. Most devices are only red and infrared. The true light devices I mentioned also support amber. But regardless, any bright light in your eyes, even red, can affect sleep. But bright red light is much better than any color of bright light. So, in order for light, the most important thing how is the color of light. So basically anything that's not red light is going to mess with your sleep. So blue, green, yellow, purple, all of them tell your body Mother Nature doesn't make those at night, it must be daytime. So when you only have red light and it's dim, you're better off. But the angle of light and the intensity of light also matter. So if you were to say at night, have a reading light shining on your book, it's
Mhm.
not going to wake you up as much as a light above your bed shining down because your
Hmm.
body's going, where's the sun right now? And the sun's above you if your lights are on at night. And that's why dim red reading lights are good. Oh, and most people, men or women around 50, start needing reading glasses. And there are studies that show reading even for 10 minutes under red light improves eyesight.
Hmm. All right. I'm convinced. I will try it. Okay, so we touched on diet, nutrition, tips on that, touched on light. What about temperature? What about core body temperature?
Mm,
Because that's such a big factor for women in midlife. What are your thoughts on that?
yes. Temperature is the third signal after light and food timing, then is temperature. Because you got to imagine, we were once floating around in the ocean as little bacteria. So in the morning, dim red light, middle of the day, bright light, end of the day, it gets cold and there's no food and it gets dark. So what you want to do is no food, darkness, and then lower the temp. And then the very low level parts of your body that really you aren't conscious of, they get the signal, oh, I should get deeper sleep. 68 degrees Fahrenheit is the ideal temperature or lower, but a lot of women get cold or they get alternating hot and cold. The good news is you can get a mattress cover that changes temperature throughout the night automatically so that if you get really hot, it'll cool you down. If you get really cold, it'll warm you up. And this can be a game changer if you're having these night sweats and things like that. If you're not experiencing that right now, it'll just cool your mattress so that your body gets deeper sleep in less time.
All right, I'm in.
It really
Amazing.
helps.
Yeah, I tell you, that's probably one of the biggest factors I'm dealing with right now.
Oh, and here's the good news. If you sleep with a partner, it has different settings for each side of the bed. So if you
Ah,
need a warm bed and your partner needs a cold bed, you can have that, and then you don't have to fight over the covers anymore.
that's amazing because, there's so much talk about doing a sleep divorce at this stage in the game in midlife. And I think that the way, if you can possibly not let that happen to your relationship and find a way where you can sleep together and continue to have that connection and that intimacy, especially through midlife, the better off. And you can just simply fix the temperature in the bedroom. That goes a long way.
It really does. And there's also things like snoring. And
Hmm.
one of the things that's really helpful for men and women is something called mouth taping. And I've been doing this for, I think, 8 years now. And what that means is before you go to sleep, you take a little piece of special sleep tape and you just put it over the middle of your lips. And that means that when you sleep, you close your mouth and you breathe through your nose. Breathing through your nose increases nitric oxide and your brain gets more oxygen. It lowers your risk of Alzheimer's disease. You get better sleep and you snore less.
Mm.
And at a minimum, if you just find you're not getting the sleep or your partner isn't, what you want to do is say, we're going to coordinate our bedtimes. And you and your partner are going to lay in the same bed and you're going to snuggle and relax until one of you goes to sleep and the other one's going to go to the other bed. So you still have that intimate connection. But just randomly going to bed by yourself every night when you're in a relationship is not a good recipe for long-term connectedness because we need our oxytocin.
That's right. That's right. A natural way to bring down our cortisol levels.
Yeah.
Yeah. Super. All right. So your latest book, you kind of touched on that. You want to tell me a little bit about that?
Yes. My latest book is called Heavily Meditated.
Great name.
Thank you. And this is about my 25-year journey in biohacking. I mentioned earlier that if you start biohacking, you end up becoming interested in longevity and in consciousness and awareness. So I realized when I was 30 that I had no knowledge or ability to even know what was going on from my neck down or how to interpret it or control it. So I went on a deep journey of measuring the signals. And one of my companies is called 40 Years of Zen, where I've trained more than 1,000 executives, men and women, on how to turn off their triggers. So this is measuring brainwaves to see which meditation practices actually permanently create neurological change.
Mm.
And Heavily Meditated is based on that knowledge, plus all of the training I've done in remote parts of Tibet, in South America, and with gurus all over the place. I was less open with this information at the start of biohacking because telling people to put butter in coffee, to walk barefoot outside, and to use red light was edgy enough. I didn't think that talking about altered states work in order to reprogram yourself I don't think we were ready for it. Longevity is now a thing. And when I started, it was fringe. Longevity's gone mainstream, and I've written a major book in that field and I'm very active in longevity. But my consciousness work has been going on for 10 years. So this is the ultimate user guide. Here's all the things that are available for you to consciously put yourself in an altered state. And there are different altered states for different things. But sleep and relaxation is an altered state. High performance and focus is an altered state. And going in and learning how to turn off reactive patterns is one of the most precious reactive states. So I go through all of the technologies, all the techniques, whether it's breath work, psychedelics, sacred, intimate sex, all of the practices that are out there, including the 3 different major categories of breath work, what different psychedelics do, what other things like flashing lights and sounds and drumming, all the ways you can learn a state that isn't really available unless you know how to do it. When you read the book, you're not going to do everything in there. No one is. But you're going to go through and go, oh my gosh, that one really resonates with me. I want to try that. And it can be really life-changing. And I give away the most precious part of 40 Years of Zen, which is called the reset process. And this is an evolved process that lets you go in a step-by-step process, consciously, permanently remove something that triggers you. So the next time someone cuts you off in traffic, instead of getting pissed off, you just have no change in your heart rate. You don't feel anything about it. And that can create so much peace in your life. When people do this practice for 5 days at 40 Years of Zen, we survey them 6 months later, 91.7% of people in a recent data set reported improvements in their relationships. So almost everyone, when you turn off your triggers, you like your partner better because it turns out it wasn't them, it was you.
And that
Or
is the
maybe, or
perfect
maybe
way
it
to
was them, but it still doesn't make you mad.
No, it's always about the self-work, isn't it? They're
Yeah,
just
it sure
mirrors.
is. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really enjoyed this conversation.
I've had so much fun, and there's so much knowledge that's been locked away in monasteries and different lineages, different practices. And it's our job now, just as humans, to be super high energy and to be able to choose our state so that advertising campaigns and criticism and stress just they wash over us and they have no effect. We don't have to catch it and then choose how to behave. We just turn off turn off the effect. It's like turning off all the TikTok alerts and pop-ups on your screen on your phone. Then you can use your phone. Your consciousness is the same. I want to teach you how to do that. That's heavily meditated. And Upgrade Labs is the place where you can go to reset your mitochondrial stuff.
Amazing, Dave. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.